My name is John. I operate the illustration brand Toonstop. It's a small-time illustration brand focused on character design and business and discipline insights for artists. This panel is being recorded. Only stick around if you're cool with that. The subject we're going to be addressing today: You cannot get something for nothing. That's the title of this panel. And the thesis today: 4 big things you have to remember if you have in mind doing a large kind of work. A book, movie, comic, something like that. Something big, something that takes time in doing. The 4 things to remember when it comes to that are your process, your practice, your patience, and your purpose. Now, we are having a little malfunction today. We're not going to have the slides, unfortunately, but hopefully the subject matter will be useful all the same. And as always, the subjects I address are going to be available as articles on the website too. For the most part, these insights are going to be coming from the perspective of doing this work in a way that pertains to visual arts, but it's applicable in other disciplines: writing, sculpture, sewing, whatever you want. If you have a big thing you're trying to do, this should be helpful. The first part of getting where you want to go, that's going to be your process. The process is how you go from blank page to finished product, how you go from nothing to something. And the process, that's just going to be whatever steps you take to get through a project. And for a larger thing, that's just going to be repeating those steps until you have enough units of work to make up that project. Having a process is, in a way, a shortcut to make your own life easier and finish things. Understanding the steps that you need to take to get through something, that's going to make it a little bit easier to finish a unit of work, whatever that unit of work happens to be. Like a checklist, or the booklet of instructions that came with your Lego set, except you're the one writing the instructions. Now, granted, not everybody is all that well suited to writing their own instructions, and that's fine. If you have the presence of mind to recognize that, find a teacher who can help you develop the process, or even I'd be happy to help you with that too if it's something I know how to help with. In my case, because I don't really like getting teaching from other people, because I really like to do things that I care about, that I like to do, I have to have a process because that lets me self-revise and self-edit and really pay attention to what I'm doing. Having a process, it's going to help you reduce errors. That clear process makes your life a lot easier. Fewer errors, easier time getting through, sometimes faster work. And as a general thing, my conviction on this is backed by the kind of people that work on games for Blizzard. It's not the way, but it's a pretty solid way. For example, when I go through the process of making an illustration, functionally I'll draw something 3 times. I've got my thumbnail sketch, a rough sketch, a clean sketch, and then the final line art when I feel like I haven't made any mistakes. And it's that foundational step of the work that's going to set the tone for, hey, the rest of this is going to go pretty good. If you don't have a good grasp on your fundamentals, whether it's your sewing, your writing, your sculpting, and you don't give yourself that space to find and check for errors, it's going to come out bad, and then you're not going to want to finish it. And that's not fun. That's not okay. You're going to have a bad time. You don't want to have a bad time. Now, when you get past that foundational process, you want to give yourself that space to do your rough work, to do your sketching, to do your cleanup. Then you can do the pretty stuff, like giving it color, establishing lights, putting on details. You have to have a specific order you do these things in. And the order of operations, it doesn't have to stay the same for the rest of your life, but doing that one order of operations, long enough, that one process long enough, you'll see where you need to change your process, and you'll be able to make your own life easier as a result of knowing how you're doing your work, having that self-awareness, having that understanding. it's just important to make sure you're doing something right before you move on to the next step, or the next piece in a step if you're doing a comic or doing a book or an animation. You want space to reduce errors. That's what process is going to do for you. It's going to reduce errors, it's going to reduce frustration, and that is going to enable you, it's going to enable you to think clearer. That clear thinking lets you finish the one piece, and then you'll get to move on to the next piece. Once you have that process and you're able to do more than one piece, and you get into what we call the practice. And that's the second P, the second element, the second step of doing something larger. You're only going to get better at your drawing, your sculpting, your writing, whatever you're trying to do, by doing that craft, full stop. You can take as many classes as you want, you can watch as many tutorials as you want, you can read as many comics, read as many books, look at as many patterns or costumes as you want, but you're only going to get better by actually doing the work. So then the question becomes, how should you practice to craft? Well, going back to what I mentioned in the practice step, or the process step rather, I do things that I care about. I do things that I like, and I make it a point to do it better every time. You know, make a mistake only once. Don't repeat your mistakes. You know, do things you care about and do it better each time. Now, I mentioned that Blizzard artist in the process part of the presentation. The guy in question, that's one Mr. Mark Brunet. He runs Cube Brush. He, in a video a long time ago, and I wish I had the link to it, but I couldn't find it, talked about how he had a better time learning because he was drawing stuff he liked, and when he was drawing the stuff he liked, he solved the problems and made it better. He didn't just slap some crap down on a page and move on with life. If he ran into an issue, he figured out how to solve that problem in a picture that he wanted to do, and then he never forgot that step. Drawing anything at all, writing anything at all, making anything at all, doing the work, and then just checking it to see what you can do better, and then just doing it better the next time, that's how you practice. That's how you get those results that you want. Now, if you can't figure out something, grab a reference. Learn how to do something. Solve the problem. Don't give up. In the act of not giving up, you're going to come out better in the next piece, and the next piece, and the next piece. You finish more pieces of work. Finish more of the things that you love. That's practice. That's how you're going to get better. And you're going to repeat that as necessary until you've gotten as good as you want to get. And that's going to take some time, but you're going to come out with mastery. You're going to come out with pieces of art that you like, that you want to show people, that you want to keep moving on with. Now we've got process, we've got practice, we know how we're going to finish a piece, we know how we're going to approach finishing multiple pieces to achieve mastery. But you're not going to want to do that as much if you don't understand why you're doing something. Your purpose. The purpose of your process and your practice. The reason you're going to do something at all. If you don't have a clear passion, purpose, or message, it's going to be a lot more difficult to grow, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to notice people. You know, the reason people stop, in many cases in the artist alley, it's two ingredients. One is the quality of the work, if they're going to stop by and look at what you're doing. The other is the work is related to something that matters to that person. It's that person's, favorite anime, their favorite comic, their favorite book. That merge, that intersection of the quality and the message, the idea, is what causes someone to stop and pay attention. You need to have a clear why, whether that's your mission as an artist or the purpose and inspiration of the piece of work itself. Doing anything simply to do it is not really going to get you anywhere. We miss that reality when it comes to art. You can draw the prettiest pictures you want, but if there's no substance to it, no reason to stay and connect with it, you're not going to have as good a time. I have a friend, he draws a webcomic. It's the only webcomic I still read. It's called Between Failures, and it's about a bunch of clerks that work for a entertainment store. And as mundane as that may seem, I'm still reading that to this day because he writes excellent people that we can relate to, and he only got that because of his own understanding of the world, because of his own understanding of how the world could be or should be, or what we want to see in the world. So what are you trying to say? You know, every great work of fiction, it's got a clear theme woven into its thread. Now, popular work and great work don't mean the same thing. You know, something might be popular, but it might not be all that great. And something might be great, it's not going to be as well known. But the great things have clear things about them that are great. Things that we can point to. Things that we understand and relate to when we look at it. Now, of the people in here, who's heard of Full Metal Alchemist? Who's seen and or read it all the way to the end? Okay. Now this one, a little bit of background information. The author, Hiromu Arakawa, she was fascinated by the idea of equivalent exchange because she grew up a farmer. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. If you didn't give something, you didn't get something. And the main characters of the story are two poor kids who tried to get something without giving something. And that spurs us into everything that we see in the course of the story. Everyone having to struggle with something. Struggle with loss, struggle with grief. And they think the answers to that struggle and grief come from trying to get something out of nothing. It doesn't work that way. And the stories were informed by real life things that came from refugees, war veterans, ex-Yakuza, and a clear idea of trying to tell these stories honestly and present it genuinely, present it in a way that made sense and was engaging, and makes us want to keep reading and see how these people help each other out and what happens at the end of it all. It's probably one of the best works of fiction ever because it manages to be well-informed socially, as a diverse cast, grounded and well-realized cast, well-thought-out characters that act in believable ways that we can relate to. Another favorite of mine when it comes to the matter of really, really compelling work, and you might laugh at me a little bit of this, but I love the film Nacho Libre. Love it. Love it, love it, ever since it came out. If you're familiar, you might be familiar with the work, but you might not. The premise is a Mexican monk is just absolutely in love with masked wrestling, but it's flatly against his passion and love for the church, his passion and love for the orphans. You know, he wants to be a fighter, he wants to be a wrestler, but he can't make that jive with the children he loves and the people he loves and the God he loves. And the film is a comedy, but it's also an excellent illustration of that struggle of a man's passion versus his responsibilities. And it's a good ending when it comes to realizing that and recognizing that. Now, if you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it. I think it's great. I think it's worth studying if you're thinking about telling a funny story with a message underneath it. And it's also based in real life. There's a guy, Fray Tormenta, a Mexican priest who went and joined the mass wrestling ring to help take care of his kids, to help take care of his orphanage. Now, when it comes to making something, when it comes to putting a message into something, the message isn't necessarily something you're trying to preach. It's just a reason that you're trying to do something. You know, it's not about preaching. It's just about how you're going to connect with your people, how you're going to make things work, how you as a person are going to connect with your audience. The author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Hirohiko Araki, wrote a phenomenal instructional work called Manga in Theory and Practice. Creative people, without exception, no matter your craft, should read this book. And one of the things he argues in the book is that all shonen manga needs to operate off of a clear theme. The theme unifies everything else in the work. The art, the setting, the characters, the writing. However implicit or explicit you intend that theme to be, your work needs to have a theme. You're not gonna go anywhere if you don't know where you're going to go, if you don't know where you want to go. You can't lead your audience anywhere if you as the driver are lost. Figure out clear themes to write, draw, or create around. And if you don't like the idea, you can simply change it or start over with another one, but have a theme and an idea to begin with. And when you do choose a theme, when you do choose a message, it needs to come from something you genuinely believe in or understand. Don't say things you don't believe in, and try not to talk about things you don't understand. You know, anybody can smell BS from a mile away. It's inside our human nature to understand when something is not right. Now, if, for example, you don't come from a trade or don't come from a part of the world, but you want to tell a story about that, do your homework. Go learn about it. And then you can infuse it with the things that are unique to you. Your writing style, your humor, how you want to present a message. Just make sure you understand what you're trying to say. It's not safe nor wise to violate your conscience. And it's not safe nor wise to stand behind things you don't understand or don't believe in. As an aside from that, you're going to give yourself an anxiety disorder and just make your own life difficult if you don't work behind something you really believe in. The purpose of art, the purpose of your art, if such a thing exists, is to communicate and preserve great ideas. If you present great work with great themes, you add to the culture of humanity and draw people to your work. Now, this isn't to say that you should never do things for self-expression and self-fulfillment. That's not it. But if you're only working in the name of self-expression and self-fulfillment, you're going to have a difficult time connecting because what you're doing might not connect with everybody around you. And you may not even have as much heart in it yourself if you're not really thinking about what you're doing. You can't create only for others, but you can't create only for yourself. If you can balance those things, if you can balance the personal fulfillment against a bigger purpose, you're gonna have a better time. You're gonna connect with people. You're going to have an audience. You're going to get your message out there, and you're going to be having more conversations with people through your art because you've given it a reason to exist. Your most important beliefs probably make excellent themes. Stake your art on what's important to you. You'll have a better purpose, and you might even find out if you need to understand your purpose better. Now we've got our purpose, why we're doing art. We've got our process, how we're going to finish the art. We've got our practice, how we're going to get better at the art. The other thing we have to understand is patience. I mentioned Full Metal Alchemist, for example. I can't remember how many volumes and pages the work is, but it took the author 9 years to finish the story. 9 years to draw all those pages, and that's on the Japanese production schedule of comic art, which is pretty brutal. You might know about it, you might not, but it's a pretty harsh work schedule, and it still took her 9 years to draw the pages and tell the full story. Recognize that even if you have everything else on lock, why you're doing something, your process of your work, your practice to actually obtain and perfect your skills, you need to have patience with yourself. You need to give yourself the time to do the work. You need to understand the scale of what you're doing. And that's something I'd be happy to help you figure out and sort out, just depending on what you're trying to do and if I can even help with it. But there's all kinds of work out there to help you understand exactly how much effort it's going to require of you to get out alive. And if you understand how much work it's going to require, you're going to have a little bit less frustration when you don't finish it as fast. Now we're going to get to the favorite part of my favorite part of the panel, the part of the show where we get to ask questions and share with each other and help each other out. Now, this unfortunately is where the recording ends, but I'd love to hear from you. Drop down in the comments any questions you have about your process, practice, purpose, or patience. Love to address that with you. We'll see y'all later.